Hey, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. Our topic is on navigating mental health, and we have some great presenters here to share that information with you. I've put a few links in the chat box, and I should also introduce myself. My name's Elena Massler with the National 4-H Council, and I work for Shop 4-H, where you can find this curriculum today. There's a link to the Help Center if you're experiencing any technical difficulties. Make sure to check that out. I've also put in a link to the curriculum and for more on our webinar series. I'd also like to point out that we have a chat feature as well as a Q&A feature. So if you have any questions, please go ahead and type them in the Q&A box and we'll address them throughout the presentation and then at the end as well. And then also the chat box, make sure to have that open. We will be using it. So this is an interactive presentation. And then also if you have any comments or feedback, anything else for the presenters, please go ahead and chime in there. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Jane Wright. She's the curriculum manager at Ohio, and she will be introducing the other presenters today.
Thank you, Elena. Could you share the presentation?
Sure.
You were ready. I'm not seeing it.
One second. Okay, there we go.
Thank you. As Elena said, my name is Jane Wright. I'm curriculum manager here at Ohio 4-H. I'm so excited to introduce our two authors, Jamie Delafield and Amanda Rains. They're both from Hardin County here in Ohio, and they both come to us with considerable expertise in mental health education. Specifically, both of them are mental health first aid instructors. They also, I would say, are the driving force behind our efforts to normalize discussion of mental health here in OSU Extension. By the way, this is kind of a cross-program area effort. Jamie's on the FCS side and Amanda is from 4-H. So thanks to you both. Please go ahead.
Right. Well, so Jamie and I, like Jane said, we're both mental health first aid instructors and youth mental health first aid instructors as well. So we could talk to you about mental health for 16 hours, but we've been told we have about 28 minutes today, so we're going to go kind of quick. So why don't we get started, Jamie?
All right, so we just wanted to give you a little bit of background first about the project. And as you can see from the slide, we know that 1 in 4 or 1 in 5, depending on which statistic and which source you use, has been diagnosed with a mental health disorder. This means that they've actually seen a doctor and are receiving treatment. We all know that many of our teenagers are not receiving treatment, but yet are struggling with a mental health problem. So that could be anxiety, depression, or even suicidal thoughts. And so one of the things that when Amanda and I got talking, we were like, we don't have a project book. We have different project books about other things, but it would be really amazing if we had a project book that could help start conversation with our teens and with their adult leaders and get people thinking a little bit more about how to identify those signs and symptoms and to begin talking and break some stigma. All right, I think we're ready for the next slide.
So our project book is called Your Thoughts Matter, Navigating Mental Health. And the first thing I want to highlight about this book is it is in no way, shape, or form meant to be a resource for people who are experiencing a mental health crisis. It is not supposed to be a self-help type thing. It is purely information. That being said, we have found that a lot of youth who do enroll in the project may be experiencing some mental health challenges, but we do not want this book to be what you turn to if you have a youth who is in crisis. There are lots of steps you can take, but this book is not a frontline resource for that. So it does encourage our youth to be part of the solution by learning more about mental health and then being able to talk about it. It is meant for our advanced level youth, so people who are in our teen audience, and they do a lot of projects that involve promoting understanding of mental health and interviewing people who may or may not work in the mental health field. We also, in Ohio, everyone takes an individual project, but we also have encouraged lots of different clubs to use the project as a whole to start discussion as a group. So we've been working with not just 4-H clubs, but also FCCLA and FFA chapters using this resource.
So we want to point out for you the project areas and what we touch on. So the first project area talks about what is mental health. There are a lot of statistics in this area, learning to know the numbers, knowing what resources to go to. We use a lot of government websites in this book, so even as the statistics change, then everything will be up to date. And that's, we think, very, very important because, as we know, we love to provide evidence-based information, and we want to keep current, and we know that youth.gov is one of the best places to go on our SAMHSA websites as well. The next thing is that we talk about each mental health behaviors and disorders, and we specifically talk about anxiety, depression, and self-harm. The next project area is thinking about stigma and why don't we talk more about our mental well-being and what is happening in society and what is going on with the media is a really important one. And then last, we have self-help and other resources. And we're going to go through some of these in a little bit more depth with you right now.
Actually, before you have a chance to jump further into the content, Jamie, I want to let people know. Go ahead, advance, Elena. I want to know, give everyone kind of the lay of the land in terms of the curriculum and how it's built. Every activity in the book includes a brief introduction, as noted here, of what to do. So right after just a little bit of an introduction, they have an activity and something to do on the page. There's evidence of the learning that's recorded. Learning outcomes are included. These learning outcomes include academic content standards from the National Health Education Standard, from the CDC. Each activity also includes some more challenges, a way to extend the learning. These are optional in Ohio. Appropriate resources are including, most of the time, these are online resources that provide more information directly related to the activity that was just completed. Basic information is included. This can range anywhere from, I'd say, 200 to 300 words. Glossary words are all outlined, are called out here in the text and then gathered in the back. I wanted to say there's a fun fact here, but depending on the topic, maybe that's not appropriate. In this book, it's a related fact. Did you know something else to know about the topic addressed in that activity? Now, depending upon how familiar you are with the experiential learning model, Elena, could you go one ahead, please? Typically, an activity in a project book includes these talking it over questions right after the activity so that whatever the experience was can be processed right away. In this book, because they're grouped in the activities are grouped in the project areas that Jamie just spoke about, the talking it over questions come at the end of the project area. It's kind of a nice way to minimize the number of similar sounding questions that the youth have to answer. So we have, I believe, 4 sets of talking it over questions in this book. Okay, now I'm going to be quiet. Jamie and Amanda, let's talk about mental health.
Okay, so that first project area was all about defining what mental health is. And so the page that Jane was explaining that had all the different parts on it, it also had that first activity where we have a term, we challenge the kids to say, what do you, when you hear that term, what does it mean to you? And then to actually look up on youth.gov what the term's actual definition is. And that just kind of sets the stage for the whole project of, I know a little bit, but maybe I don't know as much as I want to know, or maybe I'm a little bit off on what my definitions are. So we all get on the same page right away about what mental health disorder, recovery, what all of those things mean in the context of this book. So for our second project area, where we're looking specifically at different types of mental health behaviors and disorders, there's an activity on anxiety, depression, and self-harm. The activity you're looking at now talks about protective factors against some of these disorders or some of these challenges. And specifically in this one, they are challenged to design some type of message that might be seen on a bathroom mirror or inside someone's locker, in the hallway, that they think would be uplifting for someone in their school or in their club or at the fairgrounds. So that box that you see there is supposed to represent a mirror, and they are asked to come up with some of those uplifting designs. And then in the more challenges section, they're encouraged to talk to the school administration and do some of those positive affirmations in their school restrooms or hallways. So if you want to go forward. Here's some real life examples from one of the schools in our county. And they were really creative, I thought, because they used this chalkboard paint. So not only do they have these positive aspirations in their bathroom, but every month they erase them and then they come up with a new design. Or if something has happened, they can put messages in there that are more specific to the event, so that it's always changing, it's always uplifting, and it's not something that you see once or twice and then become immune to because you're always looking for that. So I thought that was really neat.
All right. So this is where we're going to ask for you all to join along with us. So we would love some crowd participation in the chat box. And on this activity, we are talking about why do we say what we say? And what sorts of things do we do that maybe inadvertently in our music, in media, in our language, do we do that promotes a negative image of mental health and mental wellness? For example, one of the things that we say a lot in Ohio, well, at least I used to say this a lot before I started teaching this more regularly, was that the weather is so bipolar. And we want to challenge in this chart for the teens to think about how would this make somebody with a mental disorder feel. So one of the things that we know is that by saying the weather is so bipolar, that's a pretty negative connotation. We're usually saying that when we're frustrated, when we're upset, when we don't want to deal with the weather anymore, and we're kind of over it. So if somebody was bipolar and we made that statement, they would probably think, well, nobody really wants to deal with me because they don't know how to handle me and I'm just a negative, and it just has a really negative connotation. And so how could we rephrase this? We could rephrase it by saying something like, the weather's all over the place today.
The weather's unpredictable this week.
Right. And so lots of different things. So we would love it if you all who are out there in all of your states across the USA would share with us maybe some phrases that you know or some words that you know that have to do with mental health and mental wellness and are negative. Throw those in the chat box and we'll work together to try to rephrase those.
So D House says, that's insane. That's a good one.
That is a good one.
I think I still say that probably a lot.
Right. So what could we say? Well, first of all, how do you think that would make somebody who has a mental disorder feel? Obviously, when we think of the word insane, we think back to, asylums and straitjackets, and I have crazy hair, but you know what I mean? Not kept, not able to participate in society. So again, there's that negative connotation and that I can't be helped. And so I'm going to be put off to another side. So how can we rephrase that? I think that is one of those that is just we no longer say that's so gay. We use this a lot when we're talking with our teens, right? We no longer say that's so gay. So when you hear a teenager saying or hear somebody saying that's so insane, we could say something like, you know what, that's not being very kind to our individuals and our friends who are suffering from mental disorder. Let's think of something else to say instead of using that.
Insane or crazy.
Insane or crazy.
And it's also important to realize that that's just not what mental health disorders look like in 2019. Right now, you're looking at two people who have been diagnosed with a mental health disorder, and I hope that we don't meet the description that Jamie just talked about. So, some of those phrases that we use are a little bit outdated too. That's dumb, that's crazy, that's nuts.
Amanda, up there I saw Amanda put down that something about
oh my gosh,
I would die, right? And that's another one that we have spoke to a lot, right? We're like, really? Let's talk about what that looks like. Is this really something that you are thinking about ending your life over. And we take that really seriously. So let's not talk that way. Just like we don't encourage somebody to say that Tess just raped me. Like that, I have 2 teenagers and that came out of my son's mouth the other day, and this mama bear came right off the couch. I was like, we do not talk that way. And then we open up the conversation about what would that mean if somebody actually did violate you in that way. And so again, are you really serious about dying right now? Is that something you're really thinking about? Because I love you and I'm concerned about you, and let's talk that through. So
what we could say instead of, oh my gosh, I would die, or if I don't pass that test, I would kill myself, we could say things like, I would be just devastated if that happened, or if that happened, it would really take a big toll on my mood and my mental health.
Right.
If I don't pass this test, I'm going to be in a lot of trouble and have to work a lot harder. There's a lot of different ways that we can rephrase some of that stuff. Another one that just came through is, oh my gosh, my OCD is kicking in. So we know that OCD is just a little bit more than having a clean desktop or making sure that all of your pencils are straight in a line. OCD as a disorder really takes over your life, and you have to make huge accommodations to make sure that you are in a place where you're not having panic attacks and things like that when you are dealing with OCD. So it's very easy to say, oh, I feel so OCD today, or my ADHD is just kicking in, but we don't necessarily experience what they're experiencing, and we don't have much of a way to know how frustrating it really is to be a person living with OCD or ADHD unless we have that diagnosis.
And all in all, this is just a great activity for us to start thinking about and to talk with teens about what they're seeing, what they're hearing, and how they're reacting. There are lots of things that we, like we said, put a stop to or think about rephrasing, and it's just teaching ourselves. And so this is a really good time for that to happen.
And then before we move on, the second activity in the stigma section is about media messages. And I really like this activity because we challenge the kids to watch a movie that is centered around mental health. Some of our suggestions are Inside Out, A Beautiful Mind, which is the John Nash story, It's a Wonderful Life. So there's several different movies on here, and we have the ratings of each of those movies in the book too, so that teens and their parents can decide which one to watch together. But we suggest that they watch it together and then keep any notes about what they see that could have a negative connotation. And a lot of these movies kids may have seen before, so they already have an idea of what that disorder looks like in the movie, and then exploring what that disorder might really look like in real life. And in the movies, things are very sensationalized. So unfortunately, a lot of us get our ideas about what is real and what is not from television and different media outlets. But without knowing someone or talking to someone or talking to a professional about these disorders, we can't really rely on just what we see in the movies. Okay, so you can move forward. Okay, yay. All right, so our last activity is all about resilience and self-help and how you can help others. And this is one of our favorite activities in the book. So we're gonna actually demonstrate it for you. And what we do is we suggest that they go around their house and they pick a few objects, and they're gonna note what the appearance is before and what the appearance is after. So these are a couple objects that we have around our office. Yes, our office is kind of strange. So we've got the rubber chicken, a dollar store picture frame, and a banana. And in the book, we just suggest that you take a hammer and go for it. So before, the chicken looked like a rubber chicken. After the hammer, the chicken looks exactly the same. The picture frame is brand new. It's in the packaging. It's not broken. And surprisingly, it's still not broken. So
wow.
Dollar General for your picture frames. But you can see where, well, I don't know if you can see where the packaging is kind of starting to rip here. And I'm sure if Jamie really put force into it, she could break the glass. And then we've got a banana in the peel. And after a few whacks, it is very smashed and it is open and it
A
is
little gooey.
probably still okay to eat, but who knows where the hammer has been. So the whole idea behind this was, first of all, who doesn't want to hit a whole bunch of things with a hammer? So that's pretty fun. But to get them to understand the idea of resilience, because resilience is a very abstract concept. When we say that kids are very resilient, you know, when you have a baby, they tell you, you don't have to be that careful because they're very resilient and, you know, you're not going to break the baby just by picking it up. But kids don't necessarily understand, and sometimes we as adults don't understand what that resilience may look like. So we wanted to give this hands-on, like, look at what resiliency is. So under the stress and under mental health challenges, the chicken bounced back and it looks the same and it did well, whereas the banana obviously was not as resilient. The thing that we really like about the banana is it looks like it might be okay because it has a protective peel. And so a lot of times we tend as humans to mask when we are having some issues. And we tend to put on that outward protection. You could call it a mask, you could call it a peel, whatever you want to call it. We put on a brave face, but on the inside, we're all smushed up. So we like the illustration of the banana. And so after after they've completed this activity, then the background goes on to explain a lot more about what resilience looks like health-wise and mental health-wise, and how you can start to build some resilience instead of just being, you know, smashed every time that you get stressed. What are some self-help strategies that you can do to help yourself feel more resilient and grow that resiliency?
All right. So we were lucky enough to have 1 year of this book under our belts in the state of Ohio. And some feedback that we got were things like, I love this project. We know that in one county, an 4-H'er sold t-shirts. They designed a mental health awareness t-shirt, sold those, and gave the money back to the local suicide foundation. We have had wonderful feedback from our local schools here in Hardin County. One 4-H club even had all of their older members take this project, and they, during their health and wellness time, when the health and wellness officer was meeting, they took the older kids off and they worked through the book, and the younger kids did something that was more appropriate to them, talking about mental wellness. Overall, what we really heard was that the kids were excited that somebody cared enough about them to give them some places to go. One of the activities is that they go and speak to a mental health professional. And what was great about that was we heard that I didn't even know that I had anything in my community. And so it was nice. It's nice now to know where the building is. And it's nice to know that my school teacher, we can talk to this person. They designed safe spaces within their classrooms so that people weren't crying in bathrooms. So we had lots and lots of positive feedback. And every time we teach on it or anytime we share, we hear more just about kids are looking for a place to talk. They want somebody to share with them. And I don't know how many of the rest of you go into schools, but Amanda and I have asked kids when we've gone in to do presentations, we've said, you know, what stresses you out? And a lot of times they're like, and there's an absolutely dead silence and no response because they're not used to adults engaging with them in that way and caring about them. And that is not at any fault of our teachers. That's just our educational system today. That time and space is not built into the 40 minutes that each high school teacher gets with them. And so giving them a place, and we know that from having this conversation with our camp counselors, as mental health first aid instructors, we've been able to teach mental health first aid in almost every school in our county because our teenagers are requesting it. Mm-hmm. They're asking for their teachers to open up. We're seeing more gatekeeper organizations, more partnerships with our schools and our local mental health and recovery services board. And so those are the positive things that are happening. All right, Amanda's tapping me because I'm going off on my rabbit hole, which I tend to do. So
this is just an it's just the page in the book that tells you all of the different learning outcomes and the different standards that are met through the book. It does meet standards that would fit into both health and social studies classrooms. There's lots of different ways that this book can be used. It doesn't necessarily have to be taken by a 4-H member and a community club. We have some health classes in our county that they're starting the book and then they work all the way through it. And when they're finished, they finish the entire project. And they're doing that as a class project. And then we've also had some clubs, like we said, do it as a group project so that they have that safe space to share and reflect. And we do find that some of those reflection questions are good to start reflecting on your own, but then even better to work with somebody else and have that conversation out loud, so that some of the things that I'm thinking Jamie may not have never considered before. So that group dynamic also really helps.
All right, so now we hope we have not talked our whole
time.
Yes,
we have 4 minutes left.
But this is our contact information. You're welcome to contact us. But right now, if you guys have any questions or if there was anything in the chat box, we are more than happy to answer. About how long are the sessions? Because it's self-driven learning, it could be anywhere from 20 minutes to 45 minutes, depending on if you go on with the more challenges. We typically like to do a lot of the activities with the kids, and so when we teach it, it's usually 30 to 40 minutes.
And you saw the activity that we did. That was one whole section, so we didn't go through and actually type out what it looked like before, what it looked like after, and what we thought about its resiliency, but we did that in just 5 minutes, and we got the gist of that activity. So it can really be tailored to what time you have. Mm-hmm. But I find every time that we talk about mental health, especially with teens, you need to budget at least 15 minutes at the end just for questions, and you need to be ready for questions that can be difficult to answer and questions that are seeming like they come way out of left field as well.
So Jane, can you speak to that?
How we're evaluating.
For evaluation?
How are we evaluating the program? That's a little bit different. So how we evaluate the book, it's already been, in its first year, or before publication even, it was field tested in Ohio, and then it has been through national peer review. We also had great reviewers. I'm trying to think, but many of our reviewers were social workers and are otherwise mental health experts. So I don't have any reservations at all about the content of the book or the nature of the activities. When you go out to schools, Amanda and Jamie, do you have an evaluation tool that you use for your presentations?
We have the standard teaching tool that Ohio State uses, but we don't have a post project summary or anything like that we're doing right now.
You don't have one customized to this content?
No. And mainly because it is a 4-H project book and the teens are self-choosing this in Ohio and using it, and school administrators, when we talk with them, are looking at it and seeing that it lines up with state standards. We have not had the need to do a pre and post or get IRB for that. So evaluation is mostly an informal evaluation with the feedback that we're getting.
So Deanna has asked, what type of training do you need to implement the program? And it is meant to be a standalone project. So it is written so that anyone over the age of 13 can pick it up and do self-driven learning. When we go into schools, we do tend to do parts out of the book, and then also we have a couple other activities that we do. So you don't need a specific training to use this at all. It is already, you should be able to pick it up, go through and read through the lesson and do the activities. Even if you've never taken a psychology course, you can implement this.
And if you're feeling nervous about teaching it by yourself, definitely reach out to your local Adamus Ford, your local mental health and recovery services. Reach out to somebody maybe in job and family services in your community, or ask if any of your 4-H volunteers have a background in this. We do a lot of work with our local mental health and recovery services board, and find that works well, just because then we are all working together on that same, you know what I mean? Because as extension professionals, we are able to get into the schools and talk with a different audience than they are a lot of times. So we've built up a really good partnership in that way.
Lori asked what's something that they might display at the fair. This past year, we saw many trifold posters. We also had a few people that brought items that they smashed in front of people.
Their mirrors.
We had one bring in a mirror that had an inspiration on it. We had the young lady from Ross County who made the t-shirts and helped use that t-shirt as part of her display. So even though it's a more abstract project, there are plenty of activities in the book that have a physical component that can be used as part of that display.
Lisa Marie is asking, is there any additional recommended reading for the youth? A lot of it is, like we talked about before, is that online content. So when you go to some of the websites that we have referred to, they are definitely giving you all of those extra resources and those helpful tools. As far as standalone books and things, no. It's just all part of the program and those websites that are out there.
So we refer to youth.gov a lot because, first of all, kids like to go there. Because it is for them and it's easy to navigate and it's at their level. But we also refer to SAMHSA a lot, the CDC, and a couple other government websites. We also make sure that we always tell people, whenever you're looking for anything mental health related, to only search site.gov, site.edu, and sometimes site.org. That way you know that you're getting information that is evidence-based or research-based, and you're not just going to pull up a bunch of sites that have some really mean, nasty things on them, because as good as the internet is, there's also some really terrible things about it.
So Gail is asking, do we have a recommendation on a resiliency curriculum? So Gail, there are two things that I can tell you that we are familiar with. One is a website called Overcoming Obstacles. It is all free, research-based information dealing with life skills and resiliency. I use a lot of their materials a lot when I'm teaching not only teens and young people life skills, but also adults. So hopefully you can find something on overcomingobstacles.org. The other one that we are aware of is through the Prosper model. It's been approved by Iowa, and that would be the life skills curriculum. That's an online, you can, I'm not sure what you have to pay to get access to that one. We are doing it through a grant, but that's another one that is really good. And then any recommendation for workplace mental wellness. So we do a lot of different things with that. There's a lot of mindfulness resources that you can find to teach people about taking, 5 or 10 minutes during the day, talking about, chair exercises. There's some really great stuff for the National Institute on Aging. The other thing that you can do is also just for workplace wellness, finding out in each workplace that you work with. One of the things I work with our county employees and letting them know just what resources are available through their insurance was a really big course that we did one day. Like here is the online cognitive behavioral therapy, and did you know that you could talk about this? And so I'm going to say your name wrong, Anandita, if you would like to reach out to me, email me, and I can share some of those things with you a little bit more.
One of the other things that we've done in our office, and like I said before, our office sometimes is a little bit in left field, but we have a bunch of these rubber chickens. And when we moved our office, it was very stressful because we were at our old office for like over 50 years. And so there was a lot of crap that we had to throw away and move and decide what to do with. And so when we moved, we started taking these rubber chickens and putting them in unexpected places so that people would find them. And it would kind of brighten our days. So like you would open the copier to put paper in and there'd be a chicken in there, or you would come in to your desk and sit down and you would sit on a chicken, or you'd get your coffee cup and yes, chicken. So just some of those kind of small, simple, how can I cheer up my coworkers things are really helpful.
Recommendations for finding opportunities to address mental health in youth. So we have used our community foundation locally, the state 4-H office, and our 4-H foundation has funded a lot of our projects. We also know that if you're looking for government funding on a larger scale, USDA and SAMHSA right now, there are a lot of things out there. So I would just Google, youth grants for mental health. You might also work, again, like with your local coalition. If you can partner with them, our local coalition, that is their job, is to find those grants. That is what they do, and they do it well. And so we are able to go in and help them teach and partner with them, and they give us the material that we need, and we're able to, again, because we know the students in a different way because of our work with them through 4-H and 4-H camp, it's really, really helpful. So check out your local foundations first if you're a county level educator, and then there's that chicken. And then if not, I would say go ahead and go to the SAMHSA website and to the USDA website. Specifically, don't look necessarily always under 4-H, but branch out into those family and consumer science areas when you're looking at USDA stuff too, because there's a lot there. And
so one of the questions was, what part of mental health has impacted kids the most? And I don't know that we can answer that. Each individual person would be, impacted differently. But I know in our community, the opioid crisis is a huge, huge, huge problem here in our county and in our surrounding counties. But 1 in every 4 or 5 kids is diagnosed with something. So even if you aren't the person who's diagnosed, you're probably in contact on a daily basis with somebody who is, whether you know it or not. And that does impact you whether you know it or not.
Yeah.
And then
Amanda, could I say something about that?
Sure.
Well, you know what? It seems to me what's impacted kids the most that I see, and I judged it last summer in a lot of counties, is that we're even having the conversation. So whether or not it's the stigma or a particular disorder, just being able to have the conversation with a caring adult counted for so much with every child that I interviewed about this project. And you don't have to talk much, like the book is designed to be an arm's length kind of exploration of mental health, but you don't have to talk to a kid for 5 minutes before you realize that they're questioning something, whether it's about themselves or a family member or a friend. It's just being able to have the conversation, in my experience, that I think has really helped some kids.
And we know 4-H started because adults weren't willing to try new farm techniques. So what do? We teach the kids, and they go home and they set mom and dad straight, and they teach them what they've learned, and they show them that it's good. So why can't mental health be the same thing? If all the adults around us are afraid to talk about this, then we need to talk to the kids about it, because if you have a child and they come up to you and say, hey mom, I want to talk about suicide, or I want to talk about depression, you're going to listen. You have no choice but to talk about it and to learn that it's okay to say those words and have those feelings and discuss what we can do. So, this is the same 4-H approach that we've always had. And in terms of, I think somebody had asked a little bit about promoting it without addressing stigma. The 4th H is health. Mental health is a vital part of your overall well-being. So we put this in with all of our other health curriculum, first aid project, tobacco project. It's just right there.
The other thing too is that we find that we spend a lot of time talking to people about your brain health, that your mental wellness has to do with how your brain works, and our brain controls every part of our body. And so if our brain is not working right and things are not firing right, then nothing else can fire right. So these are good conversations to have. And Mary Beth, you had asked, do we address that there may be young people in the group experiencing it? So we usually do not have to do that. mainly because once we lay out the statistics that 1 in 4 or 5 and then share that we are living with mental illness, the kids already know, because they are either experiencing it themselves or they've talked about it with other people in the classroom because they've had an anxiety attack at a school function, or they have experienced depression and their friends have seen them crying in the bathroom. And so when we talk about it, again, kind of at that arm's length and let them know where the local resources are for counseling, we are not the ones doing the counseling. We remind them that we're here to get you talking and to refer you to the people that need to. Just like if you had a broken leg, I know first aid and CPR, but I am not going to be the person to fix your broken leg. I'm going to step in that gap. And so they really are much more aware of what their friends are dealing with than we as adults ever can be. And so it's kind of a non-issue with addressing it because they know that their friends are experiencing it and that they are too.
And we also, at the beginning of every time that we'll do a group project or a group discussion, we'll start with setting ground rules. So they set the rules. And one of the rules is almost always, what is said in this room is going to be confidential, and we're not going to go take it out there into the hall and tell everyone. If we learn something from something that you've shared with us that may be intimate or private, we'll take what we learned and we're going to take it out there and help people and use that, but we're not going to share the nitty-gritty details that may be more sensitive or more private. So we're not going to share how we learned it, but we're going to use what we learned to help other people.
Super. Well, thank you both so much. This is a fantastic curriculum, fantastic presentation. Definitely a need for this out there. Sadly, I guess there's a need, but very, very important that we have this. If anybody has any other questions or comments, please keep typing in the chat box. And while we do that, I'm just going to make a couple of announcements. So the first is I've put a link in the chat box, but we have a great webinar series this year. This is week 2 of 9 on topics ranging from mental health to robotics to monarch butterflies. So I put a link in the chat box I just mentioned. It's also on your slide, but on that page on Shop 4-H, you'll be able to see all the webinars we had. You'll be able to register for upcoming webinars, watch recordings of webinars, download slides. That's kind of the home base for everything webinar related. And then I'd also like to mention for those of you who are 4-H educators, I know this doesn't apply to everyone, but we do have a curriculum development community of practice that we'd like to let you know about and invite you to join. The goal of this group is just to connect people, to share ideas, share resources, learn from each other. So you can follow that link to eExtension. Login is required, but you can log in and join the group. We have chats periodically, and we call them chats for a reason. They're very informal, but we're having our next one in April, and we'll be talking about peer review, both how to be a reviewer, the process, so it could be helpful even just as you develop curriculum. So check that out for more information. Do we have any other questions or comments?
I want to follow up on one comment someone said about comorbidity. And that's a concept that is addressed in the book, and I did run across it with kids who, as a result of, for example, their ADHD, were feeling depressed or that kind of stuff. So it's a great concept for kids to understand, helps them make sense a little bit about all the different things that might be going on with them.
Great.
Thank you.
Any final words from our presenters?
Just looking at the Gail talking about the prevalence of trauma, that is definitely something that we have started looking at. We do not talk about it in this project book with the kids, but I would definitely encourage all of you, if you have the opportunity to go to anything about a trauma-informed approach, please take advantage of that, because many of the kids and teens that we're working with, and many of the adults that we're working with too, have experienced a trauma in their life. And when we can say to them what happened and give space for them to answer, that's always way more important than any other conversation that we could have. So.
Okay.
Thank you guys all for being here. Thanks so much.
Thanks,
for
everyone.
attending, everyone. Thanks for the presenters, and I hope to see you all next week.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.